Hey, I'm trying to live until I die. Come connect, you know it's a lewd state of mind. Yeah, yeah. Talking traveling, if you wanna fly. Fitness and finance, living a better life. Keep it raw, no filter. Living with no limit. Thank you for tuning in. Come on, let's get it.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Lewd State of Mind.
Thanks for having me.
It's such a great pleasure to have you back because you've been here before.
Yes.
You haven't been in the hot seat, obviously.
No.
Are you feeling excited about today?
Yes, I've been stoked all week.
Unbelievable. A lot of guests, they've got this nervous energy. They're scared of the unknown. But I suppose that you know, because you've been here behind the scenes, you knew what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, and I ask myself, why am I here, having known that?
Well, can you explain to me and the listeners why you are here? Jess, of course, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name's Jess. I originally come from the UK.
Oh, I thought there was an accent there.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's nothing.
There's
That's
not a lot
fine.
I can do about it.
You know what it does is it gives us international cred because we've got guests from all over the world.
Oh, I don't know if I've ever been called international before, coming from Manchester.
International cred.
Yes.
You are ticking our boxes.
Wonderful.
Hey, before we go any further, you've supplied mimosas this morning.
Yes, breakfast.
So cheers to you. Oh, look,
Cheers.
I'm
I'll
shaking.
Make sure I don't. There you go.
Always sounds good.
I love a mimosa.
That sounds good on the mic too. Any alcohol at 10 o'clock in the morning is good.
Yeah, well, I thought Jägermeister might be a bit too much for 10 a.m., but we'll start off gentle.
I'll tell you what, I was in Queenstown last week, as I was explaining, and Jägermeister is the first thing that we do before we jump on the ski slopes.
Really?
It's a tradition, yeah. You can get these little bottles, and what you do is you take it off, put the cap on your nose,
Yeah.
and then you scull it, and then you're good to go.
I always think alcohol that comes in miniature forms tastes better.
Oh, it does.
Like when you go on an airplane and they give you little tiny bottles of... Do they still do that now?
I don't think they do.
Oh.
When was the last time you were on a flight?
The last time I was on a flight and wasn't stressed out of my head because I have a toddler was probably pre-COVID. So that was the last time I got to enjoy a flight.
You are a new mother, aren't you? Well,
Relatively
you're
speaking,
fresh.
yes, fresh.
2 years. Young boy?
Yes.
Terrible twos.
Yeah, he's my little gremlin.
Is he just like his dad?
Yes, the
Yep.
best and the worst features.
And for those people that don't know, you're actually the better half of Tim. Tim is the ACL guy.
Yep.
He was on podcast, don't quote me, might have been 22, 23. He's the ACL expert that we had.
Yes.
So here we go. We're sharing the love. We're getting the whole family in here.
Yeah.
Once your son gets to 3, we'll get him in here as well.
He's pretty good at talking.
See what he's got to say?
Yeah, he can come in and tell you all about Thomas.
Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah.
What else? What else is his favourite? What's he into?
He likes diggers. He really likes the Shabuzi song that talks about everybody in the bar getting tipsy. That's his favourite song. He just walks around the house going, oh my, good Lord. So, yeah, we have to...
Wow. The future's bright for him, isn't it?
Yeah, watch out, Karen.
2. Wow. That's insane.
Yeah.
You loving being a mum?
Yes, this is... I love this age a lot more than I loved the newborn age. I think some people like the tiny babies. I really enjoy toddlers because they have a bit of personality. I'm less worried about him dying. Although, actually, well, he climbs now, so there's probably more of a chance of... It's more his fault, though, now, if he dies than my fault, I think. Maybe don't put that in.
No, in my defence, Your Honour, it was his fault that he
chose
climbed.
to climb on the sofa.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's some horrible videos of babies climbing on TVs and then just getting slammed by them as they tip upside down.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways you can die, and I think there's a song, "Dumb Ways to Die." Have you heard that one?
Yes.
Dumb ways to die.
I think I got lost in a Wikipedia page once about like ridiculous deaths, and there are some really weird ones on there.
It would be very embarrassing to die in a dumb way, wouldn't it?
That's what I think. If I ever got to heaven and, you know, I died because I'd vomited and knocked myself out on the toilet seat, can you imagine? Just, you know, you're there next to a hero or something, and you've just...
Well, I think you'd probably be. It'd be like airline travel. You'd be in the cattle class lounge, whereas the heroes will be in the lounge. They'll be in the VIP lounge.
They'd put me back next to the bloody toilet, wouldn't they? That's what
Probably,
they'd do.
yeah. And then you'd have to live with that eternally, looking at a toilet,
Just
knowing
limbo.
that you died on the shitter.
Yeah. Not even on it, just like just smelling it, essentially.
Oh,
Just-
stop it!
Yeah.
Stop it! It's too early in the morning for
Sorry,
that.
it's I brought alcohol.
It's fine. It's totally fine. Getting back to your origins.
Yes.
You're from the UK. You're
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Manchester, is that correct?
Yeah, about 20 minutes outside of Manchester.
Born and bred there.
Yes.
Yep. You only child, siblings.
Got a younger sister. She's 7 years younger than me. So.
So what? She's about 13.
I'm going to turn 35 very soon.
Wow.
Yes.
Good work.
Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you.
I wouldn't have said 35. And I think there's actually a rule for guys is you keep it under 30, because
Yes.
if you get it wrong, it's not good. Just stay under 30. Anything under 30.
Yeah. Aim low.
Yeah.
Aim low. Just not too low, because that could be a bit.
No, that's a
embarrassing.
bit creepy.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I did well. I
Yes,
did well.
you did well. You did well.
So you've got a younger sister?
Yes, younger sister.
Your parents still alive?
Yes, both still alive. Everyone still lives back in Manchester.
Great. So what made you move? How'd you end up in Australia? I'm sure there's a great tale.
Oh, I wish there was.
Did
There
it start in a
isn't.
bar somewhere, or no?
Well, Tim and I started in a bar.
Of course. Isn't that a given in the UK?
Yeah, I'm glad that. Yeah, it was organic. Is that the word you use? Rather than
Sounds good. Yeah. Yeah.
don't come for me if that's not the right word.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, we met in a bar and 10 years ago. And Tim had always travelled a little bit with his old work because he used to be a sports journalist.
That's correct. Yep.
And so he kind of had an idea of moving overseas, and I never really thought about it.
And it was never on your radar?
No, it was never not on my radar, but I don't even know. I really wish I had a fun story for how we landed on Melbourne. But I think one day we must have just had a conversation and I said, I'm just going to shoot some people a message on LinkedIn and see if they want a speech therapist. And then lo and behold, somebody did, and they sponsored us to come over.
Oh, really? So a company?
Yes.
Because you are a speech therapist?
Yes.
We'll get to that shortly.
Yes.
So LinkedIn, business saw you, said, yep, we want you.
Yeah. So
And they sponsored you to come over, which is the perfect scenario, isn't it? 'Cause,
Yeah.
So how does the sponsorship system work? Can you explain?
Yeah,
how
so it might have changed since I came over. Touch the table, sorry.
You can do it.
Can
You
I
can
touch
do
the
it.
table?
You're
Oh,
fine.
It's not
Yeah.
going to electrocute me.
No.
You have to have a job that is in demand over here. So speech pathology was on the occupation list at the time.
Perfect.
And you could get sponsored for 2 years or 4 years. And so we thought, fuck it, let's do 4 years, because if we don't like it, we can move back.
Yep.
And 2 years just doesn't seem
Well, you're
a
just
long
getting
time.
embedded. You're just starting to get
Yeah.
embedded in society,
Yeah.
aren't you?
Yeah.
Starting to assimilate, get used to cultures and certain things like that. So
Yeah. So yeah, we went for the 4-year visa, and just really took to it. And then COVID happened about 18 months into being here.
fuck COVID.
Yeah, I hate it. Like, it's just...
I don't know anybody that's got a good thing to say about it, to be quite honest.
Well...
Oh, probably the person that
No.
lost a lot of weight, maybe.
Kids. I've got a lot of kids that bloody loved it because they didn't have to go to school. They just got to stay at home, didn't they, for the best part of a couple of years.
But that fucked a lot of kids up, though, didn't it?
Some kids, yes. But some of my autistic kids for whom school
Was
is
difficult.
difficult, being able to be at home reduced a lot of those triggers. But for a lot of other kids, it was difficult.
Well, not just the kids either. It's the adults that were don't want to go back to the office now because they've had this scenario where it's actually an ideal situation for you if you've got any type of social anxiety, don't like working with groups of people in certain environments, and there's people being told to go back to work, and you can imagine the stress that they have after having all this period at home, comfortable, being productive, and being mentally stable in their environment, and being forced to break that and go back into an office. So I get it. I understand it. I mean, with me here, I cannot talk to anybody. I work alone. I can talk to nobody all week, all day, and then come in here and talk shit. And I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. But it's a controlled environment.
Yes.
It's you, me, it's Maddie. Hey, by the way, sorry, Maddie. Hello, Maddie. Maddie's our new producer. He started, this is his first, there's a lot of firsts going on today.
He's doing a fabulous job.
I mean,
by
look
the
at
way.
him. Look at him over there. We haven't got a camera shot on him yet, but we'll get there. Ladies, just in case you're wondering, he is a good-looking rooster, but he's taken. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Boo.
you need to do the wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, we'll insert that later. Although you did it just perfectly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Getting back to your journey and how you landed
Yes.
in Melbourne. So when you and Tim, how far into your relationship were you and Tim before you decided to come to Australia?
3 or 4 years. I think everyone around us seemed to be starting to get married, buy a house, think about kids, and I think there was a part of us that maybe just went, fuck it, let's go, and not as a permanent thing back then when we first came over, let's just go and work somewhere different. Let's go somewhere warmer.
So you
So
remember?
we came to Melbourne.
I know that's an oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Do you remember the conversation? No. Do you remember? You don't remember sitting down going, "Fuck it, let's just do it."
Not
like,
at all.
There was no decision over a beer at a pub. Right, we're going to do this.
I mean, there could have been. We used to drink quite a lot back then. We used to live in the city, so there would be happy hours, and it was fabulous because you could go finish work at 4, and you'd get like a pint for £2.50.
Wow.
And it was decent beer as well. It wasn't.
I was going to say
shit beer.
you wouldn't get one for £2.50 at the moment.
No,
would you?
oh my God. When we first moved over here, we went to the city and it was like $15 for a pint. Tim didn't have a job and I was like, that is it. You will nurse that drink for the next 3 hours. You're not having anything else. How dare you spend $15 on one drink?
Poor old Tim. Eh?
And now I'm like, oh, that's just what it is. But yeah, poor Tim had to nurse this warm.
I was going to say that equates to an alcoholic sobering up, doesn't it?
He had the shakes after that.
What a culture shock.
Yes.
A, to get to Australia, and B, to have to not have numerous pints of beer on an ongoing basis for the night.
Yeah, it was. From a health perspective, it was probably a lot better. But yeah, I really wish there was a specific memory I have of deciding to come over. But I wonder whether it was just a loose comment, and I said, oh, I'll see what happens. I'll send some messages out. And then before we knew it, it was really real.
So Tim was basically riding your
He was my
coattails, wasn't he?
Let's not beat around the bush here.
You got that edit, Matt. That's a nice little short.
That's the only thing that's going to be on your Instagram.
Tim the bitch.
I love you.
Of course you do. It's all love.
Yeah,
it's
please
all
still
love.
marry me in 3 months.
So you said you were 3-4 years into your relationship?
Yes.
You weren't married? You weren't engaged? Or
Nope.
Nope?
None of that. We just, I think Tim was a little bit too old to come over on a working holiday visa.
Is there much of an age difference between you two?
4 years.
Okay.
So not
He was
really.
just out of the bracket.
Yeah. So he couldn't come over without me having a a job and being sponsored.
He was your bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He couldn't go anywhere.
Perfect.
And then as soon as he could, I had a baby.
Oh, Jesus.
No. So yeah, we came over together, and it was great. We loved it. It just felt it was hard initially. I think, making friends as an adult is really difficult.
It sucks.
It really is hard.
I do not recommend it.
No, we were both. I don't want to speak for Tim, but I left home at 18, went to university, 2 hours away, lived in halls, didn't live at home at university. Then I moved to London. I've never really been at home since I was 18. So whenever I've moved, I've always kind of had to make new friends. Still have my core friends.
Yep.
So I suppose in some ways, and I think that was similar-ish for Tim. So it wasn't a, oh my God, we've never had to make friends before situation. But I think over here, what's very different is a lot of people tend to still be friends with who they went to school with.
Yep. I've got friends from 45 years ago from kinder.
Yeah. And whereas in the UK, if you move around a lot, you go to halls, a lot of your friends tend to...
I'll just stop you there. You've mentioned halls twice.
Halls, yes.
Can you explain that to me and everybody else?
It's a halls of residence.
Right.
So when most people in the UK don't live at home when they go to university. Most universities,
So it's student accommodation.
It's student accommodation.
Yeah.
Yes,
No, just
I'm
pack
just
you in
using the slang.
No, that's fine. That's right. Just so our
Thank you.
our listeners understand.
Yes. These headphones very slippy on my hair.
Are you all right?
Yeah. Just gonna
Do you want to stop for adjustment? There you go.
That's why I was fidgeting with them, because they were falling down my head.
That's fine.
So back to halls. It's where students live. So you go in this grotty student accommodation.
Are they shit house?
Yeah, and they continue to be pretty shit house. I remember my second year of uni, I lived in a house with 6 of like my best girlfriends. And I don't know if do you know much about Newcastle?
No, educate me.
They say why pet, Geordie Shore.
Ah,
Geordie Shore's
really?
Newcastle. Yeah. That's about
that's
it.
what
I'm not
they're
doing
famous.
anymore.
That's what they're famous for.
Yes.
My brain just brain farted trying to understand exactly what you just said.
So they say why I pet is
Why I
like
pet?
why I pet is
Yeah.
like how are you?
Ah,
How are you?
I got the Geordie Shore bit. I
Yeah,
didn't
and
get
then
the
Geordie,
way I
yeah.
pet.
So that's Newcastle. That's they all speak.
Ah,
They speak in Geordie.
is that still a thing? Is Geordie Shore still a thing, or is
I think it's holding on by a thread. I don't think it's the same as it was 16 years ago or whenever it first came out.
I'm sure there's a few tragics holding on to it.
Oh yeah.
That'd be like a Bible for them, wouldn't it?
Well, it was filming when I was at university.
Oh, cool.
So we would go out and you would walk past bars that would say, if you come in this bar, you consent to being in the background of Geordie Shore. And
And were you there?
absolutely not, no. I mean, we were terrible, but we weren't that bad. Christ. Did not want to flash my knickers on national TV.
No.
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 thank you.
No. Especially.
Especially, look, here's your speech therapist.
Yeah.
There's our ass.
Well, back then, I
Yeah.
mean, what are we talking about? A decade ago, a little bit
More
more.
than a decade ago, about 2008, 2009.
Yeah, we could still get away with shit back then because there wasn't a camera. Well, there probably was, but I'm thinking back to the shit that I did when I was a kid. There were no cameras around, and yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah, I think
I'm glad.
my generation is probably that generation where we had a bit of both. So social media was only really just developing, so you could get away with not using it,
Yep.
or you could use it. Whereas now,
Well, you can't do anything.
I'm hoping that by the time my son is a teenager, no one cares for social media anymore. It absolutely terrifies me.
Who knows what the little tack is going to have to put up
There's
with?
going to be VR in it. He's going to be walking around with a bloody headset on or something, just hoverboarding in between the rooms.
He might be on his way to Mars by that stage.
No, he's not leaving me. He's my baby. He's not
Oh
going
right,
to.
no, well that's fair enough. So
He
he's
can
not.
go to Sydney.
He's not going to be one of Elon Musk's little monkey experiments.
If he buys me a nice house,
Oh right, is that what you're hoping?
I wouldn't mind.
Get him into Bitcoin.
No, Tim tried to get into Bitcoin, and,
did
and
he?
we don't talk about that anymore. There was a period every week he'd be like, "I've made this, I've made this, I've made this," and then it just went quiet.
And
I
then
was
it
like,
stopped. Yeah. Hey, Tim, how's that Bitcoin going? Huh?
It's just dust now.
Oh, it's good to see he's doing some sound financial investment for your future.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of that when we retire. However, Dogecoin, whatever it was he invested.
Oh, he's in the dodgy.
Dodge, yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
We are not giving any financial advice on this
This is
podcast with
lovely.
regards to any sort of coin or Dogecoin or
No.
anything in it, crypto.
No.
No, we do have actually a finance episode. The next episode actually comes out. It would have come out by the time this comes out.
Oh, good.
So listen to that.
Listen to that. Don't listen to this.
There is some great Tim and Nick from Rate One. Great financial advice.
Right. Well, I
Highly
actually
recommend.
would quite like to speak to them.
They are very nice guys with a lot of knowledge. Now, 2018, you arrived on the sandy shores
Yes.
in Melbourne.
Yes. Yeah.
The reason why you came to Melbourne was specifically because of the company that you work for and the sponsorship.
Yeah, we landed on Melbourne as well. Tim had been over here a couple of times covering the Australian Open, the tennis, and I had been out here for 3 days. Sounds like a lot.
That's a long way to come, isn't it?
So
previously you were saying you were out here for 3
I'd
days.
been on holiday to Australia.
Right, for 3 days.
No, sorry, I'd been to Melbourne for 3 days.
Right.
I'd been to Australia for 3 weeks. Like we
Right.
did Sydney, Queensland, and
Cool.
Melbourne.
So you knew what you're in for.
Yes, I like Melbourne. Melbourne to me is
Just pull that mic just a little
sorry.
bit closer. That's all right.
Sorry.
That's fine.
fine. Melbourne has a bit of a European feel to it. I think
agree.
it's I love the culture of Melbourne, the CBD.
You definitely love your city, don't you? Because you said you're in London. You lived in London.
Yeah, lived in London, lived in Leeds, which is the city centre that Tim and I met in. Not to bag Sydney, I did not like the city of Sydney, the suburbs.
The vibe,
Yeah, the vibe of Sydney it reminded me a little bit of certain areas of London which were very showy, a bit like I don't get the money feel when
Yeah.
I'm in Melbourne, whereas in Sydney I feel like it's who you are, what you do.
There's a lot of wank. We call that the wank factor.
Yeah, okay, let's go the wank factor then.
Yeah.
So that was why I thought Melbourne, let's move to Melbourne.
Yep.
And no regrets. We put a pin in a map and landed on Maudie.
Oh, good choice.
Yeah, moved to Maudie.
Perfect.
Loved it. Yeah.
You could do a lot worse. You could have
Oh.
you could have got the other side of the city.
Yeah. Well, because the company was based in Frankston Mornington, the one that
Yep.
sponsored me. And I was like, I don't want to live that far down. I want to be on the train so we can get into the city. We want to be near the beach. And Maudie seemed to be a good distance between.
It's perfect. And for those people that don't know where Mordialloc is, Google it. It's a gorgeous part. So it's described as Bayside.
Yes.
In Melbourne.
Yes.
You got a lot of other suburbs close to that, and they're all on the train line, as
Yeah.
you say. Boost it straight to the city.
When we were coming on the flight over, we were sat next to a lady who lived in Victoria. We're like, yeah, we're moving to Mordialloc.
Mordialloc.
She was like,
Gee, what the
fuck's that? In Scotland? Mordialloc? and then Beau Marie, that was the other one.
Oh, right.
Beau Morris.
So
Beau Marie.
So when I came here from NZ, I called the Nepean Highway the Nepean Highway.
Nepean, yeah.
The Nepean.
Nepean. We
Yeah.
called it the Nepean.
Yeah. All these taxis looking at me weird. Can you take me to Nepean Highway?
Yeah.
Anyway, happens to the best of us. I mean, we're still smart people. Just saying.
You can have smarts in all different areas.
Correct. Mordialloc is an awesome place.
Yes.
2018, you landed there.
Yes.
Nice. And so getting back to what you actually do for a profession,
Yes.
you're a speech pathologist.
Yes, so various different countries call it slightly different things. The UK, speech and language therapist.
Yep.
Here, speech pathologist. The US is a speech language pathologist. The friendly term would be a speechy.
A speechy.
Speechy.
That sounds groovy, baby.
No, I don't. Some people hate it. They're like, ugh, I haven't studied for all this time to be referred to as a speechy. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Just
Yeah, get over it.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's cute.
It is. 12 years.
Yes, 12 years as a speech.
That's a long time. I said earlier that you must be an expert.
No. Well, yeah.
Come on.
Okay, yes. I suppose I have a lot of experience as a speech therapist.
And you've got your own business, obviously.
Yes. Decided.
When did you start?
I went out working for myself October last year, so almost a year.
Fresh.
Yes.
It's all fresh.
Yes.
And it's called?
Rosella Speech Pathology.
Cool. And you're available on socials?
Yeah, so on Insta and Facebook, I am getting round to doing a website, but it's because it's just little old me, and a lot of the families and people that I work with are word of mouth. I've been very fortunate that I haven't had to really advertise, and so
Well, that's a good thing. It's more money in your back pocket, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more time I get to spend reading up on things that I want to support my clients with, and also I like making Instagram posts that give people tips and advice and stuff. So for me, I'd rather spend my time doing that than
That's perfect.
a website.
Well, that's what's it's same with us. It's about educate and facilitate.
Yeah.
What made you get into speech pathology?
You're going to ask me that question.
Well,
Okay, I'll give you the honest answer.
please.
Sorry to all my clients. I do, I'm very passionate about what I do. But I had no idea what I wanted to do at 16. So at 16 in the UK, you basically decide if you want to go to uni, what you want to go and study. I knew I wanted to do something where I was helping people. Oh, maybe I'll be a teacher.
Nurse? Did that come on?
No,
No?
I'd be shit at being a nurse. I'm not going to lie. I can't deal with like piss and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not that that's all what nurses do. I could not be I have so much respect for nurses.
Of course,
oh
we
my
all
goodness.
We all do.
I bow down to you. You're a wonderful profession. But I'm just a bit like I can't deal with fluids.
Fair enough.
I toyed with being a sports journalist, weirdly enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I don't know.
Were you sporty as a kid? Did you play sport?
Oh, hell no. I am the least sporty person. I can't be arsed. That's my issue.
So that would have been perfect for you.
I like watching it.
Yeah.
I like watching it. I liked writing about it. I actually I entered a competition when I was 16, won an award for Sky News, got to go down to London, do
Awesome.
a tour of their newsroom. And then I think 2 weeks after winning this award, I was like, nah.
Nah,
Don't
not
do-
for you.
No, I did work experience with a local newspaper, and I think I was like, oh, fuck this. I don't want to spend my life ringing up.
Well, it's
harassing-
not exactly helping people, is it? I
No,
mean,
and I think that was it. There was the passion wasn't there. I
Yeah.
think with whatever you do as a career, there's got to be an underlying passion for what you do. And if that passion isn't there, you're going to probably not enjoy that job and leave it quite quickly.
exactly. And look, the thing is, at 16, you don't really, you've only just started on your journey.
Yeah.
And look, go down one road, you may take a complete 180 and go somewhere else. There's no rules. It's not set in stone.
No.
But as you say, you've got to enjoy what you do.
Yes.
And sometimes you got to do something shit to get to the point where you get.
You got to
An
kiss a lot of
opportunity.
frogs sometimes.
Well, and some people are lucky. Some people make their own luck.
Yes.
My son Mav at 15, he still doesn't completely know what he wants to do. He's still finding his feet. And for me to push him, or me as a parent to push him in a certain way, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. Shit, I left school at 15. I told my high school principal to go get fucked. And I walked out, and my mum said to me, "You can only leave school if you've got a job." So next day I got a job.
Yeah.
It wasn't the job that was going to be my forever job. It was a job. It was a means to an end.
Yeah.
So as you say, at 16, a lot of people have got nowadays probably a lot more pressure on them to make big decisions based on what their family thinks and what their friends are doing.
It's huge.
It's a lot of pressure. It is a lot of pressure. I know Mav has felt that, and that's why we've backed off and just said, look, just find your own path.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, watch this space.
I'm excited.
We're all excited. We're all excited.
It's going to be good for him.
I know.
I'm thank you for being that wonderful parent for him and not being a pushy parent.
Oh, look, all I've tried to do is just set him up for success, give him the skills. It's funny because when he said that he didn't want to do the production side here anymore. You know, look, I was disappointed because it was great to have him here for him to learn and for us to bounce off each other. But he said, I want to go work somewhere else, and I want to take those skills that you've given me and shown and put them into practice somewhere else in a real world scenario. And to hear that was that job done as a parent, perfect.
Yeah.
You know, which is fantastic. So
He's got a good head on his shoulders.
he's a good kid, eh?
Yeah.
He's a good looking rooster too.
Oh, he's very cute, isn't he? Am I allowed to? I'm a bit old. Am I allowed to say he's cute?
Sure.
He's cute.
Yeah.
He's
I think all the
he's gonna break some heart.
he is, unfortunately.
Well, he might not. He might.
Well, I hope I've taught him well.
He might accidentally.
Getting back to you at 16, what decision did you make after
So
winning that award?
So I was going through a prospectus. It's like when you universities, you write to these or you did back in the day. It's probably all online now. You got sent out these booklets, and it just had the lists of all the degrees.
It's like a menu of what you could do.
Yeah, here's this. These are the grades you need for it. This is how long it is. And I was reading through, and then there was this one course that said course fees free.
Wow. Ching, ching, ching. A bell went
And it
off.
was speech and language therapy because it was paid for by the NHS,
Of course.
because it was in high demand. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Kind of read into it and thought, yeah, okay, that's communication. That's interesting. I didn't have this big euphoric moment of this is it. But then I remember a couple of weeks later, I watched a documentary about stuttering, which is referred to as stammering in the UK.
Yep.
And I saw the impact that these therapists were having on these individuals who just were struggling so much with their communication. And I thought, maybe this is something that I could do. And so, yeah, I applied for that, got the grades, and
What was the uptake like back then for speech therapists?
the course was very small. It was probably one of the smallest in the uni.
Yep. How many students?
30.
It's bugger all, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And when you think about the demand
Yes.
and the...
the demand, though, over here, I mean, the demand in the UK is huge, but here is a whole different kettle of fish.
in what way?
We have the NDIS over here. Do you know much about the NDIS?
Yes and no. I'm
it
sure
stands
you're
for
going. I'm sure you're going to educate me on it.
Disclaimer: I am not an expert, nor do I work for the
No,
NDIS.
exactly.
So the NDIS stands for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and I think it came out around 6 or 7 years ago. Might be earlier than that, but it was when I moved over. It was just starting to become a thing in Victoria.
Actually, Maddie, can you just Google NDIS? We'll get some stats up there, and just so we can refer to it.
And what this essentially did was it allowed people who had not been able to access allied health services, so not just speech therapy, but occupational therapy, physiotherapy. There's other allied health professionals.
The chiros, are they in the same
Essentially, people
umbrella?
who had a disability,
Okay.
they were then given funding so that they could access therapy services. So yeah, there you go. So it now supports over 500,000 Australians. So 500,000 Australians who potentially were only able to access therapy when they were in primary school.
Right, because it stops at a certain age. Is that what you're saying?
So my knowledge isn't great because I wasn't here before this was rolled out. But I think, so for example, if you were diagnosed as being autistic before the NDIS, I think you may have been given like 20 sessions from like Medicare.
Yep.
Or you might have had access to a block of therapy through public healthcare.
But it was finite. What is that? What you're saying? It was
Yes,
finite.
I feel like it wasn't just this ongoing, and so there were a lot of people, especially when they got into high school, that just didn't have anything. And then when the NDIS came out, people who had a diagnosis were then able to access therapy.
On an ongoing basis. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then there was just the demand outweighed the supply, and there wasn't enough therapists. There still isn't enough therapists.
How many are we short? Are we short a
Well,
lot?
the wait lists in some places are potentially like a year.
Really?
Yeah.
So the previous company that you work for,
Yeah.
prior to going out on yourself,
Yeah.
there would be people waiting a year to get your services.
So you could be waiting X amount of time for an assessment, and then if you wanted or needed ongoing therapy, especially if you wanted it after school hours, it's a 9 to 5 business.
Yep.
If you wanted a 4 till 5 p.m. slot on a Wednesday, because people work full time, parents can't take time out of their business day, you don't want to pull your kid out of school, you could be waiting years for that slot.
That's
to become
insane.
available.
In this day and age, that's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, and the sad thing is that you've got littlies, so children who are 2, 3, who are in that prime window of, if they received intensive therapy now, the prognosis for them, developing language skills, developing their speech sounds might be a lot better than if all of a sudden they wait till they're 4 or 5. And because, as we know, when kids are little, their brains are just so beautifully sponge-like.
Spongy, yeah, exactly. Well, I was going to say to you, what's your typical client? Are we talking the younger kids? Is that a majority of who needs the services?
It goes across the age range. I enjoy working with older clients.
Just pull that mic a little bit closer.
Sorry, I've moved again.
That's fine.
It's like I'm kind of like an iceberg. I'm just drifting.
That's all right. I'll help you steer the ship.
Thanks. So the speech pathologists work across the age range. So
Of course.
Could be from babies who are in NICU, which is like the special care units in hospital, because they may have been born prematurely, babies that need support with their feeding. Because if you didn't know, speech therapists also support feeding.
I had no idea.
Yes.
No idea.
We're tangenting back to what a speech therapist does, but I think it would be useful for you to know.
Oh, for sure.
So it's obviously we do work on things like stutters, articulation, supporting language development and understanding, supporting pragmatic language. We work with children who have developmental differences, delays. We work with adults who have had stroke,
Brain injuries.
Parkinson's, anything that you think of that could impact communication, a speech therapist should be involved in. But we also work within feeding, swallowing. So for patients who have had a stroke, as you know, a lot of the time the muscles in the muscles in the body don't work anymore, and so that's why you're at risk of choking. And a lot of people, when they have a stroke, are at risk of pneumonia, because that's when you get like food or liquid could end up in your lungs, because everything's not constricting, it's not working as it should do. So speech therapists come in and will look at someone's diet. We'll look at thickening fluids. I don't know if you've ever heard about thickening fluids.
Explain.
So, for example, this mimosa here, if you have a sip,
It's tasty. It is.
goes down very quick.
Mm-hmm.
If your muscles aren't strong enough to kind of constrict and tighten, because if you think about it, when you breathe and eat and drink, it's all the same tube. But at some point, there are some kind of valves in place that send your food and drink down to your stomach and the air down to your lungs. And if those valves aren't working properly, they're too slow, they're not opening and closing, you run the risk of that going into your lungs. So the idea is, if you there's like a powder, and you can thicken fluids to make it almost like a
gel.
like a gel,
Yeah.
a paste, and that slows it down so that it gives your muscles time to kind of catch up to stop it from going into
Is there
your
any
lungs.
sort of exercises that you can do to help?
So I'm not.
with that?
This isn't my area of speciality.
I'm just very surprised that what you do includes that. That's fascinating to me, and I had no idea.
Yeah, it's why I like kind of telling. It's not my area. I would love it to be in my area, but I was saying before, I don't like the fluids and the icky stuff.
Well, exactly. I can see why.
So
I can see why.
I did when I was training a few placements in hospitals, and I couldn't deal with that.
I get it.
And I also found it really sad, like working in a hospital.
Yeah.
Something about that I just
They're
mentally couldn't deal with.
They're never happy places, are they? I mean, as you say, the staff are absolutely amazing. But they're not places that you want to go hang out unless you need to.
Yeah, and I just felt so useless. I just wanted to do more than what I could. And maybe, now that was when I was fresh and 19 and didn't know much. And now I would know that I could do a lot to support them. But at the time, it just wasn't, my brain didn't light up with that. And I thought, you have to be a positive person to go into those places. You have to be able to feel confident and know what you're doing. And that just wasn't me.
Yep. That wasn't you then. Is that you now?
I still couldn't do.
No?
So the posh word for it is dysphagia. That means that kind of is the umbrella term for eating and drinking, swallowing. I couldn't do that. No.
You learn something every day.
There you go.
It is. It's a fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
If you think about it, it's all linked.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. So a typical client for me now would be I work predominantly with neurodivergent people. So
can you explain that? What that means?
So neurodivergent is where the brain processes things differently. So we have at the moment 2 brain types. So you could have a neurotypical brain type, which is, I suppose, what people may consider, and I'm going to do this in air quotes, a normal brain.
What is normal?
Yeah, I don't think that that's the right terminology, but anyway. So neurotypical is essentially what the world is set up for. The neurotypical way of thinking, of communicating, of learning. And then we have brains that are neurodivergent. And this covers brain differences such as autism, ADHD, bipolar, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, OCD. Essentially something where developmentally you're born with it, the brain is different. And
can I just stop you there?
Yes.
We're born with it.
Yes.
Are these what you've just described over here as
neurodivergent?
Okay. Are we born with that, or can that develop over the course of our lives?
So the things that I have just described, those types of diagnosis, you are born with.
Bipolar, ADHD,
yeah,
OCD.
Yeah, it's part of your chemical makeup.
Yep.
And every type of those diagnoses, once you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, because everybody within those little umbrellas is completely different.
Correct.
So I predominantly support autistic people with their communication and with their understanding of their brain and how their communication style differs from a neurotypical communication style.
So are you essentially trying to learn them to understand how they think? So understanding the way they process thoughts, and then to have a little bit more awareness about why that is, or is that a little bit too far for somebody that's got autism? Because as you say, there's ranges of autism, isn't there? There's different.
So there's at the moment in Australia anyway, autism is diagnosed in 3 levels: level 1, level 2, and level 3.
Can you explain the 3?
Yeah, if I can. Again, not an expert. Level 1 essentially is limited to low needs. Level 2, medium needs. Level 3, high needs. I disagree with the levels because you could, in that moment in time when you're being diagnosed, you could be very regulated in the morning. You could be relaxed. The environment could be beneficial for you. You could essentially be having a great day. And you go in, and whoever diagnoses you goes, you're level 1. And then 2 days later, you go to an environment that is you're dysregulated by. There's been lots of communication breakdowns. You're frustrated. The environment is not supporting you, and then all of a sudden your needs go up. But because on a piece of paper you're level 1, that means the supports that you're given in terms of the amount of funding you're able to access is limited to a level 1.
Okay, so just to break that down for our listeners, so the diagnosis 1, 2, or 3 is going to directly correlate to the amount of support and funding you're going to get from the NDIS.
Currently, yes.
Okay, so somebody that's level 1 is going to need what exactly from the NDIS as opposed to a level 3? What's the differences between the two?
It could change. So there's also things like the NDIS will take other diagnoses into consideration. So there are also things like having an intellectual disability, which therefore would mean that if your learning style and you've got an intellectual disability, your learning style might be you physically might be 20 years old, but mentally you might be 4.
Yep.
And so obviously, therefore, you're going to need a lot of support within your day-to-day life to able to function, to able to be safe and happy. And I think a lot of people who are diagnosed as autism level 1 that previously may have been referred to as high-functioning autism, if you've heard that term before,
yes,
high-functioning autism, Asperger's.
Like high-functioning alcoholic, isn't it? The same thing.
Yeah, so it's for me, and I'm passing on information that I have been told from the autistic community, because I'm not autistic, and so I'm not the expert in autism. People who are autistic are the experts in autism. They have said that those labels and those levels aren't reflective of what it is to be autistic. So, for example, you could have someone that's level 1 that then in 3 years' time is about to transition to a high school. All of a sudden, you've got change of environment, you've got a change of people, you've got so much extra pressure on your executive functioning part of the brain that's responsible for organizing, for planning, for problem solving, all of this change. And because you're level 1, you should be able to deal with that relatively well.
Doesn't work that way though, does it?
No. And so I get it. The NDIS is not an infinite pot of money. It has to come from somewhere. But I feel as though the diagnosis should be more functional. It shouldn't be about this label or this level. It should be about...
It should be more fluid, isn't it? That it can go from one category to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as you say, if most of these cases, children are being diagnosed. I think there's a lot more with other diagnoses that are happening in adults. We'll talk about that a little bit later on down the track. But as you say, if they're diagnosing children, and as you say, they go through life and they've got all these extra stresses, as you say, like going to high school.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of whether you've got autism or not, as a young developing adult, that can be stressful.
Yeah.
You know, it can cause anxiety, and it's fascinating to me with regards to the NDIS that we've got this system, and from what I know about the NDIS, it's a little bit broken. It's not providing the care and attention that it needs to when it needs or how it needs. And it seems to be an ongoing situation that I don't think is going to get any better. And people within those systems, whether they're handicapped or whether they're disabled or whether they've got OCD or autism, the level of care is not been afforded to them. Which is, would you agree with that summation? Or?
Yeah, look, I think going back to what existed in the UK in terms of support from the NHS, the NDIS is great because it has allowed people to have access to therapy that they've never had before. But I think there are definitely flaws within the system. I think sometimes it can depend on who receives your documents and your paperwork, and I guess the training that those people receive is to not just go down a list and go, oh, your diagnosis isn't on here. So, for example, I work with a lot of people who have disordered language skills. So, for example, they might know the words in their head that they want to say, but being able to put those words together to form a cohesive, fluent sentence is really difficult. You get a lot of people that go, or the thingy, or they use the wrong words, or it just sounds, it doesn't sound right. This is something called developmental language disorder.
Can I stop you there just for a second? Because I've got a burning question.
Yeah.
So what you've just described, does that include people that use the word like?
So I think...
like what I mean? You know what?
Yes,
like,
when they use like all the time.
Like?
So probably not. I think that might be known as a filler.
Does that annoy the shit out of you?
A little bit, yeah. It's very American.
I could not honestly have a guest sitting opposite me saying like
all the time.
Every two. That would do my fucking head in.
Yeah. It's essentially there as a way sometimes of giving people that extra time to think about what they're going to say, but people don't even realize that they do it.
No, exactly.
It's annoying.
Sorry, getting back to
No, you're good. I'm glad you picked that up. But so for, or they struggle to remember what people have said to them. And these people with this diagnosis, that's not funded by the NDIS.
Oh, really?
Mm.
So you've got a whole scope of ailments, all these categories, and there's still people that are falling through the gaps.
ADHD by itself is not funded under the NDIS.
Okay, well, so if it was funded, what would it provide its patients?
So you could have people be able to access psychology so that they can explore strategies of how to support their brain to manage life in a way that's less stressful. In terms of for language disorders, they can access speech therapy. We're not saying that people need to have therapy every week for their entire lives. I disagree with that. I think there's a point where that's actually a bad thing. You have to have breaks from therapy where you go and you practice these skills.
Well, you put it into, as you say, put it into practice.
And you generalize your skills. Yeah. And I think going back to the point I made earlier about there being a shortage of therapists, it's also potentially because now you have people who, do have a diagnosis that is for life. But that doesn't mean that you have to have speech therapy every week or every fortnight for the rest of your life. And because then your people aren't being discharged, it doesn't then give somebody else the chance to come in and also access therapy.
So you're saying there's a finite amount of help. It's only going to go so far for so many patients, and if patients don't fall off the end, as you say, with having the support that they need, there's not places coming through for them.
Yeah, and people have to trust within themselves that they've got so much, they've been given so much from their therapists over the years that it's okay to go away for the next 6 months, year, and just check in. Just check in with your therapist. Just have an hour check in once a term, just to check everything's going okay. And if there's a big life change that comes up, then you can look to have another block of therapy. Yeah,
deal with that situation as it arises. But
it's that it doesn't need to be this, and then this is where the issues with the NDIS come in, is that if people then go, oh, but if I don't use my funding, they're going to cut it.
Lose it, yeah.
So then where does that leave me if I want to come back and see you in 2 years' time? I have no funding, I'm no longer on the NDIS, I have to go back to the bottom of the waitlist and reapply for things. So it's a really icky situation sometimes to be in as a therapist.
Icky's probably the right word.
Yes.
It sounds terrible. I'd hate to be within the system. Now, going back to you and your business, so we talked earlier about some places having a year wait list.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on how many clients you have and how often they're seeing you and what sort of rotation or
Yeah. So I work 4 days a week. Sorry. I did so well then as well.
yeah.
4 days a week.
Oh, that's a nice life, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I work 4 days and then I have my 2-year-old on the other day. So some would
True.
say
Fair enough.
more than a full-time
You're
job.
doing 8 days.
Yeah, and then when you run your own business as well, it's not just the therapy. It's the, as you know, it's the invoicing and the emails and the, oh God, and it's tax year and I hate Xero. I just do not want to do any of that. That does not give me dopamine, which we'll talk about later on.
Yes, we will.
So I think I probably have around 60 clients currently on my caseload that I either see on a weekly, fortnightly, or monthly basis.
Wow.
And they, as much as I said, my clinical skills are better suited to the older kids, young adults. I also do have some littlies. So kids that are kind of under 4.
Yep.
Just because it's really difficult when you know, I know how much they need it. They need that.
What do you
input.
think do you think they need it more at 3 and 4 than what they do?
Oh, it depends. It's a different well, yes and no. I'm going to be non-committal to that answer. I think it's all an individual case, but as I said before, that window of impact, I suppose, is a bit larger when they're younger. And especially in terms of mental health, those, you know, going in when they're 3, 4 and they're at kinder and then they're going to be going to school, setting up these environments for them and educating teachers to understand that we're not supposed to change this child. We're supposed to support this child to feel safe. And what we really need to be changing is the environment that they're in, because when we change that, this child is able to regulate and is able to access learning. And I think in the past, that's what's happened, is the focus has been primarily on, we're going to change you. You come to therapy and we're going to teach you how to be neurotypical. We're going to teach you how to fit in. And that's not right. That's not the right way of doing things.
It doesn't sound right to me.
No.
Not at all.
And so there's been a lot in the past of children masking. And masking is a term where you change yourself to fit in. So you know how I before said, if you don't want me to swing on the chair, I'll do something else. That's on me. That's me. And if I concentrate so much on not moving this chair, I won't be able to have a fluid conversation with you.
Yes.
And it's, you know,
I was supportive, wasn't I?
You were beautiful. You were great. I would have walked out of here if you were like, you sit still, you fucking bitch. So I think what we've seen in the past, and maybe when people listen to this, is to think about when you were at school, those kids that were constantly told to sit still. You'll have seen kids rocking on their chairs and they would have been told to sit still. Or everyone has to come and sit on the carpet with crossed legs.
Yep.
And you put your finger on your lips.
Oh, Jesus, I'm getting flashbacks.
A bit of PTSD in there.
Yeah, a lot.
Sweat.
A lot.
And you couldn't interrupt. And you couldn't copy what your friend was doing, and you had to be quiet. And, you know, all of these things, which for some children, their brains were able to do that. For other children, not so much. So you had the ones who literally could not control those impulses that often were shouted at, were told you were naughty, the kids that talked a lot, the kids that moved around a lot, got up from their seat. And then, so they would probably get removed from the classroom, sent somewhere else. But then you would have had a proportion of those kids who saw what happened to the kids that were being really impulsive and just kind of masked. So they stopped doing all of these overt things and masked to fit in. And then they would get home and have big meltdowns at home because they had kept all of this in. They had changed who they were, what came very naturally to them. Then they get home, which is their safe space, and then it's just this eruption at home. And you would have lots of parents say, they're like this at home, and the teacher was going, no, they don't do any of this at school.
Well, it's fucking deep, isn't it? When you scrape away the top layer and you get to stuff like we've just talking about, it's crazy.
Yeah.
What's normal, you know? And if you are normal, are you masking? Are you? It's a fucking minefield.
Yeah. And so for those kids who, you know, sit still, when I work, I never expect any of my kids to sit at a tabletop. If they want to sit on the floor and we do our work, we'll sit on it. If they want to stand up, if every 10 minutes they need to do 10 jumping jacks in order to concentrate because they need a movement break, let's do it. Is that harming anybody?
No. It's
No.
it's understanding their requirements.
It's understanding their requirements.
Yep.
Is if everyone sits on the carpet and they sit on a chair at the side and have something to fidget with, yes, they look different to everybody else, but is that an issue? They're still learning. And essentially what we're doing by telling children they have to follow this one list of rules that everybody has to follow, you're doing them a disservice. You're not supporting them at all.
I'll give you one question before we take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah, teachers have got a shit of a job.
Yes.
Do you think they have the tools that they need to deal with our youth?
I have a huge amount of respect for teachers. I think what they have to do every year seems to get harder. I think a lot of it comes down to what they access when they do their training. I think there needs to be more modules on supporting sensory differences in the classroom, in recognizing and understanding different neurotypes. And by neurotypes, I mean the different brain types out there.
Yep.
Because I feel as though if they're taught that when they're training as teachers, it's so much easier to identify within the classroom. And essentially, they're only doing their job. You know, they don't, but if someone walks past and they've got this kid's doing this differently, this kid's doing this differently, it might not look on paper as what they're supposed to be doing, but I love those teachers that just let kids learn in a way that they want to learn. Those kids then want to come back to school. Those kids might do better in the exams. And so I think a lot of it comes down to, again, education for trainee teachers, education in whole team meetings of teachers who maybe studied a long time ago and just need a little bit of a refresher. But, you know, kids are kids. Let's let them be kids and stop them forming into this mold that society wants them to be.
Well said.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in and for your time. You know the vibe, I'm steady living until I die. It's a lewd state of mind and we showed you that. Keep it authentic and real, I hope you coming back. Hey, make sure that you subscribe, cause we got it popping all the time and it's going down. If you wanna elevate, wanna live a better life, keep it locked here. You know it's a lewd state of mind, let's go.